And voting concludes in Myanmar's month-long election with the military-backed party on course for a landslide victory, a result critics warn will prolong the army's grip on power. And for more on this election, we are now joined by Simon Tay. He's Associate Professor and Chairman, Singapore Institute of International Affairs, here in studio with me. Professor, given the widespread international view that these elections really lack credibility, and it's being sounded by across the globe by even human rights organizations, is the military leadership actually attempting to address these at all?
Well, it's really been 5 years since the coup. And I think a dynamic is changing. And the global context is changing too. The South American tensions, the problems elsewhere in the world, Ukraine, Gaza, are all younger than this conflict in our region. I think this election, therefore, in that situation, could be something the military are gambling on, that some countries will make a change of position. Now, Westerners, human rights activists, they've made up their minds. ASEAN, to some degree, is rather standoffish. But there are other countries, Russia, China, North Korea, which have already shown signs of opening up ties with Myanmar.
Well, the junta presents the outcome as a step towards, restoring civilian administration in the nation. But in practical terms, in your opinion, how much authority would a so-called civilian government have, and where would the real decision-making power really continue to reside?
Well, there's two kinds of legitimacy. One's the formal legal, and there's one's the really on the ground. Let's take the formal legal. It's very likely that Min Aung Hlaing, who's overdue to step down as military commander, will basically take off his uniform, as you've been seeing in electioneering, and put on a civilian outfit and be the new leader. Now, the Constitution does allow that. You must remember that in a way, the period when the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi were in charge was kind of the interregnum. This country really has lived a prolonged period of military strong influence, like military just running the country, and saying their own so-called timeline and roadmap, so-called, to democracy. And so we may wish for the past, those sort of golden opening years of Myanmar, but it seemed either way, this is pretty much gone.
Yeah.
And so we have to deal with the reality on the ground. Now, a year ago, it wasn't clear the military had real control. And still today, in a lot of cities, not less the border areas, in some of the heartland, they don't have full control. But military experts tell us the surge is on their side. Now, I think in that sense, we're facing a clash between principles and kind of a realism. Nobody wants a Syria, sort of collapsing state in our country. China does not want this problem on the border, neither does Thailand. So I think if they play their cards right and can control things on the ground, and they stop killing citizens, I think there's some peace. People will want a problem to put on at least some stability compared to the problems we had 4 years ago.
Yeah, we're talking of times where there is still chaos, there is still conflict, there is still, trust issues, I guess, to say the least. Now, what does holding elections under these conditions then mean for the state's capacity to really prove that it can govern in the medium to long term?
Well, sometimes there are real differences and sometimes it's papering over. And this is more like papering over. The fact that it's taken a month to do it, today was mainly in Yangon, but they really held only areas where they have some control, and that means that they have more supporters than others. And secondly, you can see the participation rate in elections has come markedly down. And if the polls are right and that the USDP, the military-backed party, wins, we've got to ask ourselves, what really changed in the last 5 years when the NLD won a huge victory? And the answer doesn't seem to be the real vote, real sentiment of people. I think many people I've spoken to think they've got no choice but to go along. So internally, I think it lacks that kind of legitimacy compared to the wild popularity of the NLD. But I think after these years of suffering and exhaustion, some people in Myanmar will just say, okay, they have it their way, and we'll see what happens next.
So perhaps they are very tired of the whole situation and they just want to see what really comes next for the nation?
Normal lives have gotten much worse. Some people are on the borderline of starvation. Some sections of the country are ungovernable. And I think even Myanmar people who want democracy have learned to put up with the military pushing their own way.
It might become a reality, where you merge things together with a bit more of a imagination of getting better.
Well, that's where ASEAN is too. We have this 5-point consensus. We held it a long time. The elections don't feature. We never ask them to hold elections. It's not a factor. We actually want to see an end of violence, a dialogue with all parties. And we have to see what the military does later. When I say stability, does that mean having won the election? Are they going to talk to the ethnic armed organizations? Are they going to talk to the remnants of the NLD and find some way? We don't even know whether Aung San Suu Kyi is alive and well.
Absolutely. And really, to what extent do you think is then this election less about domestic political reconciliation and I guess more about shaping how ASEAN and key regional parties, engage with Myanmar's leadership?
That's partly it. I mean, partly to open the door for the Russias and the Chinas and China got a huge economic investment in Myanmar, even before this, to be fair to China. They just want to deal with whoever's in charge. But we say we have to see what happens next. Don't forget that we had previously a very flawed election before they released Aung San Suu Kyi. The military obviously won the election because NLD wasn't participating. But then, strangely, they turned the corner where they allowed Aung San Suu Kyi come out, the NLD come out. I'm not saying it's a repeat. Huge breakdown of trust. People have saw 10 years of reform in the ash bin, right, of history. But if you want to be optimistic, the military has to be watched to what they do next. If they take this victory, they're obviously going to win, and they start to have some sort of dialogue, some sort of stability, some sort of better lives for normal citizens. It's better than where we are.
Yeah, observing these things is one part of it, and raising concern is another. And United Nations and human rights organizations have really raised voices and strongly criticized the polls. My question to you is, how influential are human rights concerns, their voices, in shaping international response to Myanmar at this stage where we are?
The military in Myanmar and Myanmar economy as a whole has learned to deal with a pariah status since way back. Like I said, Aung San Suu Kyi's opening was a sort of a weird one for them in their long history, modern history. They've really been under more sanctions than anything else. The UN has been a very weak legitimacy force among Myanmar citizens because it's been seen to be perennially criticizing Myanmar. And the genocide case before the ICJ is also heard. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but among ordinary Myanmar citizens, even those who don't like the military, they see it's a very nationalistic thing. So I think that the international community won't change its mind, but the military are gambling that a few people will, and they can deliver something, then things get better. The key places to watch, I think, is Thailand. Thailand's got a long, unresolved border. At the moment, they're playing their cards with some guardedness because they have their own elections coming up. And the foreign minister is quite a principled foreign minister who wants to see improvement rather than a military rule forever.
Now, ASEAN has also, raised its objection or concerns as well, time and again. How do you think then the ASEAN partnering countries, member countries, will react to this whole, saga that's happening?
Well, I think in the end of the day, ASEAN is known for principles, and human rights and democracy is in the ASEAN Charter of 2008. And it has kept a sort of sanctioned constructive engagement with Myanmar for years and years. But it has to become realistic too. How many problems do we want? And how do we handle problems? ASEAN generally dialogue. So this refusal to talk to the military has been unusual. The normal way is, you have a coup in Thailand, we still talk to you. But stop killing your citizens. Stopping the violence is the first thing, not democracy, not elections, the five-point consensus. And if that can be delivered by the military and some sort of compromise domestically, I think ASEAN can be pragmatic. Otherwise, Myanmar is going to the arms of China or Russia, and that ASEAN will play itself into a corner.
Well, it's a very important election coming at a very critical point in time, and we'll just have to wait to see how the results will pan, how the leadership changes will also pan out as well. Thank you so much for coming to our studio, explaining to us at large, Mr. Simon.
Thank you, Ella.
Well, we were speaking with Simon Tee, Associate Professor and Chairman, Singapore Institute of International Affairs here.